Mother's Day brunch was supposed to be a calm affair, mimosas, in delicate flutes, scrambled eggs in silver chafing dishes, polite laughter over the clink of forks. Old age wisdom family gatherings only stay calm until someone decides the spotlight needs new direction. I sat near the end of the long table at the Magnolia Room, a place that smells faintly of roses and fresh baked scones even in winter. My daughter Emma was across from me, her husband Daniel beside her, and on Daniel's other side sat Sylvia. Daniel's mother draped in a silk shawl that looked like it belonged in an art museum. The moment came after coffee had been poured, but before dessert trays made their slow parade down the table. Emma stood glass in hand and smiled in a way I hadn't seen in months, a curated smile, the kind you pose for in photographs. "I just want to take a moment," she said, "to thank the woman who's been such a guiding light for me this past year." Her gaze landed on Sylvia, warm and steady. "You've shown me strength, grace, and generosity in ways I didn't know I needed. I want you to have this." From under the table, Emma lifted a velvet box, the color of midnight. Sylvia opened it, and the light caught a cascade of diamonds so sharp and bright it felt like the whole room inhaled. "This is a $20,000 necklace," Emma continued, "because no gift could truly match what you've given me." The applause was polite, but the glances were not. Quirky fact people can clap with their hands while side-eyeing with enough force to bend the air. Joke one, social physics hasn't caught up with brunch etiquette. I sipped my coffee and tried to keep my face in the neutral zone, somewhere between "I'm impressed" and "I'm doing the math on my mortgage." Sylvia rose and kissed Emma's cheek. "You didn't have to," she said, which in my experience often means I wanted you to, and I'm glad you did. Dessert was served tiny tarts and chocolate truffles, but my appetite had slipped out the side door. Academic debate phrase for what I was feeling, displacement of maternal recognition. I wasn't jealous of Sylvia's jewelry. I was uneasy about the cost, financial and otherwise. Emma isn't careless with money. At least she hadn't been before. The figure 20,000 kept circling in my head like a moth that didn't want to leave the lamp. When conversation shifted toward vacation plans, I excused myself, saying I needed some fresh air. Outside the patio overlooked the river, the breeze carrying faint music from a street performer a block away. That's when I caught fragments of a conversation, two women from another table. One of them I recognized as Sylvia's neighbor. Always knows how to get people on her side. Oh, and remember the fundraiser last fall, that anonymous donor? Guess who? I didn't catch the rest, just enough to feel the itch of something I couldn't yet name. Back inside, Emma was laughing at something Sylvia said, her hand resting lightly on Sylvia's arm. Daniel sat between them, smiling in that distracted way people do when they're not sure if they should be happy or just polite. Quirky fact in photographs: proximity is often mistaken for closeness. Joke 2. If that were true, elevators would be full of best friends. As brunch wound down, Sylvia made a point of hugging me. "Such a lovely day," she said. "Emma is a treasure." "She always has been," I replied, my smile steady but my mind already tugging at loose threads. In the parking lot, I hugged Emma and Daniel, told them to drive safe, and watched as they pulled away with Sylvia in the passenger seat of their car, the velvet box on her lap. I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I stopped at the Riverside Park, sat on a bench, and let the morning play back in my head, frame by frame. I had a feeling this wasn't about jewelry at all. I didn't leave the park bench right away. I let the river do its quiet, heavy breathing while I replayed the clink of that necklace, the way Emma's voice rounded its syllables like she was trying not to wake a sleeping animal. Old age wisdom, when your instincts start whispering, "Don't turn up the music, turn down the room." So I did. I drove back to the Magnolia Room under the pretense of forgetting my scarf, even though my scarf was draped across my passenger seat like a very smug alibi. Inside brunch was dissolving into that afterglow phase, hostesses corralling stray coats, waiters ferrying plates that had turned into abstract art, the pianist packing up his standards. A few guests still mingled near the bar. I hovered by the floral arrangement smelling roses I didn't believe, and watching the currents of conversation I hadn't noticed while I was busy swallowing my feelings whole. Sylvia was in the lounge velvet box tucked into her tote as casually as if it were a paperback. Emma stood beside her, laughing at something a woman in a blue blazer said. I recognized the blazer as Sylvia's neighbor, the same voice I'd heard breeze across the patio a half hour earlier. I drifted closer, studying a potted fiddle leaf fig with theatrical interest. Joke 1, botanical espionage is my love language. And I told her the board would adore her, blue blazer was saying. With your recommendation, of course. Oh, Emma is a natural, Sylvia said, squeezing my daughter's hand. We'll get her on the gala committee. It's a lovely way to meet the right kind of people. The right kind of people? I kept staring at the fig so I wouldn't roll my eyes hard enough to need physical therapy. Emma smiled, but her shoulders made a small inward motion like someone bracing for a cold wave. I don't know if I have the budget for those galas, she said lightly. Nonsense, Sylvia replied. We'll make it work. There are ways. She said it like a solution, but it sounded like a leash. I stepped away before my face betrayed me beelining to the check-in stand. The maitre d', a man named Colin with the kind of sympathetic eyebrows that probably got him promoted, looked up. Forget something. Only my composure, I said, then added, and maybe a scarf. He found my not-scarf grin worthy of a smile. You were at table 12, right? With the Ellis Whittaker party. He tugged a drawer, produced a collection of left-behind napkin rings, and exactly one silk scarf, peony print, not mine. Afraid I don't have your scarf. No worries. I lowered my voice. Hey, Colin. That necklace. Is there any chance you know where Emma bought it? She mentioned it so quickly I didn't. Colin, Professional Switzerland, made a small neutral face. Couldn't say. But Sylvia often works with Lavache & Co. They deliver here for special moments. Lavache & Co. I'd seen their storefront velvet mirrors and a security guard who looked like he could bench press a car. $20,000 is either a number that lives in your budget or a story you tell yourself about who you're becoming. I wasn't sure which narrative Emma was buying. Back in the lounge, Daniel finally peeled himself away from a cousin and wandered over. Hey, Mom, he said a little too loudly, like he was talking through the end of a long hallway. Wasn't that great? It was something I said. Where'd she find a necklace like that? Sylvia recommended a place, he said, voice lowering. Said she'd handle the appointment and get a better price. He scratched his jaw the way he does when he's trying to erase a sentence he just spoke. Emma said it felt like an investment. Does your checking account feel that way? I asked, mild as tea. He opened his mouth, shut it. We've got it covered, he said, which is the kind of sentence people use when the numbers haven't met each other yet. My chest did a small, sensible cough. The neighbor in blue breezed past to kiss Sylvia's cheek. I'll email the board, she said. Then to Emma, by the way, when you host, do use the caterer I recommended. They're not the cheapest, but it all returns as social capital. Academic debate, phrase firing quietly, instrumental reciprocity. The prettiest bow you can tie around quid pro quo. I watched Emma nod and write something in her phone's notes. My insides did that slow, irritated boil I remember from PTA fundraisers, the one where you realize the ask wasn't a request so much as an assignment. Quirky fact group expectations can lift you like a tide or drag you like undertow. The trick is knowing which you're standing in before you drown. Joke, hey, yes, yes, ocean metaphors at brunch. I contain multitudes and caffeine. I wandered outside again because my face needed air. On the patio, a woman in a green wrap, Sylvia's other neighbor, the one who'd been half of the patio gossip duet, was tapping a cigarette out of its pack with the elegant guilt of someone who promised she'd quit. She clocked me with a polite smile. You're Emma's mother, right, Marian? That's me, I said. She's lovely, Green Wrap said. Sylvia's been so thrilled to have a daughter who appreciates her taste. There was a slight speed bump before appreciates a tone only detectable if you've spent years parsing complimentary insults. I went for gentle. Does Sylvia often advise on, taste? Green Wrap's laugh was low and full of neighborhood history. Sylvia's a force. She means well. But her gifts come with choreography. My son's fiancée learned that last year, Sylvia paid for their engagement party venue, then insisted on approving the guest list and the color palette. It was a lot. Another crumb. And the necklace today. Green Wrap exhaled. She adores a tableau. She'll make it sound like a gift to you to perform the moment she's written. But hey, she added, flicking ash into a tray, no one here minds being groomed if the grooming glitters. Some of us mind, I said softly. She studied me. Then anchor your daughter. That girl looked like she was holding her breath. She stubbed the cigarette, smoothed her wrap, and drifted back inside, leaving me with the kind of advice that doesn't come printed on linen napkins. I wasn't going to chase Emma into an argument in a public dining room. Public scenes are Sylvia's native habitat, not mine. Instead, I texted, Emma, proud of you for your grace today. Call me tonight, just us. A minute later, of course, Mom. Love you. The words were right. The punctuation felt careful. Driving home, I took the long route on purpose, letting the leafy streets do their suburban lullaby. I cataloged the details. Emma's curated smile, Daniel's hallway voice, Sylvia's hand on Emma's wrist, while the neighbor said, board the phrase, we'll make it work. I had enough to justify a conversation that wasn't about diamonds at all. At home, I pulled a legal pad from the junk drawer and wrote in thick blue ink, Mother's Day observations. Under it, bullet points, short, factual, unaccusing. Then I added a header. Questions to ask without accusation. How long had the necklace been planned? Who arranged the purchase? Was financing involved? What committees is Sylvia suggesting? Time/cost. Are there any new joint accounts or cards for convenience? I know my daughter. If I come at her with, how could you? I'll lose her to defensiveness in under 30 seconds. If I ask, walk me through, I get a better map. Old age wisdom's second cousin tone is a passport. Use the right one for the country you want to enter. At 7, Emma called. Her voice was lighter now that the theater had emptied. Hi, Mom. I've got tea, I said. And questions. Not an interrogation, just maternal due diligence. Jokba, I learned it from the DMV. They never ask why, only what and when. She laughed, then sighed. I know the number sounded insane. We did a 12-month financing plan. Sylvia got us preferred terms through the jeweler. Preferred terms in exchange for future appearances, I said, keeping it airy. Mom, she said, drawing it out, not annoyed so much as tired. She's been so helpful with Daniel's job search, and the gala committee could help my design business. It's networking. And the board membership, I asked. Silence hummed for 2 beats. She thinks it's time I upgraded my circle. There are circles, I said, and there are rings that tighten until you can't breathe. I watched you today. You smiled with your mouth, not your shoulders. She exhaled, honest this time. It was a lot. I'm not here to criticize a gift you chose, I said. I'm here to ask if any strings feel like ropes. Maybe she admitted. Just a little. Then quicker. But she's done so much for us. You can appreciate help and still set a price you're willing to pay, I said. Financially and emotionally. We talked logistics, the financing, the invitations already hitting her inbox, the mentoring lunches. Sylvia kept calendaring. I offered numbers, not judgment. Here's what that monthly payment does to your budget if revenue stays flat. I heard her scribbling. We agreed she and Daniel would come by Wednesday so we could walk through the spreadsheet together. And bring the paperwork, I added. Let's look at it with all the lights on. After we hung up, I wrote another line on the legal pad. Don't fight her love for Sylvia. Fight the math. Quirky fact, you can argue feelings for hours and lose, but if you underline an interest rate in red, people put down the sword and pick up a calculator. Before bed, I laid the pen across the pad like a tiny bridge between my worry and my plan. I wasn't going to tell Emma who to love. I was going to hand her a clearer map, circle the dead ends, and mark the exits she could use if the party turned into a maze. And if Sylvia's generosity had interest hidden in the fine print, we'd read it aloud slowly with our fingers following line by line until the room stopped spinning. Wednesday evening, Emma and Daniel came over carrying a slim folder and a grocery store cake, the safe kind of dessert that says, "We're here to talk, but we don't want it to feel like a meeting. Old age wisdom sugar can't fix everything, but it can buy you the first 20 minutes of patience." We sat at the dining table, the cake in the center, like a neutral referee. Emma slid the folder across. These are the financing papers for the necklace, plus some of the gala info Sylvia sent. The financing terms were not great. 12 months high interest after the promotional period and a clause about preferred customer invitations that sounded more like an obligation than a perk. Quirky fact, marketing departments can turn a leash into a ribbon if they choose the right font. Joke 1 times New Roman for contracts that want to look boring while they bite. We went line by line with Daniel leaning in more than I expected. I didn't realize the interest jumps to 28% if we don't pay it off in time, he said. That's why we're here, I said. You need to see the full cost, not just the purchase price, but the social price. What are these gala events going to run you? Emma flipped to another page. Tickets are $500 each. Sylvia said she'd help with the first one, but after that, and outfits, Daniel added. Networking is apparently a formal dress code sport. Academic debate phrase hovering over the cake, unsustainable social capital. I pulled out a notepad and did a quick budget projection. Current income, living expenses, new necklace payments, projected gala costs. If you do 3 events this year, even with her covering 1, you're in the red unless your income increases by at least 20%. Emma frowned. She made it sound like the events would pay for themselves in opportunities. Opportunities are not guarantees, I said. And even if they were, you shouldn't have to buy a ticket to be considered worthy. We shifted to the gala committee details. Buried in the fine print was a donor expectation clause. Committee members were encouraged to contribute or secure a minimum of $5,000 annually. Encouraged is one of those words that sounds optional until you see what happens when you don't comply. Daniel sat back. This is a lot. I thought she was just introducing Emma to people. She is, I said. She's also introducing her to a system that rewards compliance with more invitations to comply. Emma's shoulders sagged. I don't want to disappoint her. She's done so much for us. You can appreciate her without adopting her entire playbook, I replied. And you can set limits now before you're too deep to climb out. Quirky fact boundaries are easier to build before the house is finished. Joke too cheaper too. Fewer surprise renovations. We decided on a plan, pay off the necklace within the promotional period, skip all but 1 gala this year, and politely decline committee membership for now. I suggested phrasing that made it about scheduling and workload, not rejection. Sylvia seemed like the type to handle too busy better than not interested. By the time the coffee was gone and the cake was a memory, Emma looked lighter. Daniel even joked about pawning the necklace if the interest rate monster got too close. Half humor, half insurance policy. As they left, Emma hugged me a little longer than usual. Thanks for not making this about you and her, she said. It's about you, I replied, and making sure the math works for your life, not just someone else's image. After they drove off, I wrote in my notes, they're listening. Keep the conversation on numbers and choices, not personalities. Then I underlined it twice. The following week, I decided to get a second opinion, not on the necklace, but on the patterns. Old age wisdom. When you're too close to a picture, find someone who's good at stepping back. That someone was Joan Miller, my neighbor of 20 years and a retired accountant who treats balance sheets like crossword puzzles. I invited her over for coffee and set the folder on the table. "This is Emma's current financial landscape," I said, sliding her the papers. "Necklace financing gala invitations, committee, expectations plus, whatever you think is hiding between the lines." Joan adjusted her glasses, her eyes narrowing with the precision of a hawk spotting a field mouse. "Well, this clause here." She tapped the preferred customer section. "It's essentially a marketing pipeline. She'll be getting targeted offers, high-ticket ones. And this," she flipped to the committee form, "isn't just social, it's a donor funnel. They're locking her into a donor profile for future events." Quirky fact in the nonprofit world, your first donation is like your first tattoo. You've signaled willingness, and the artists know where to find you. Joke 1. I prefer my ink and pens, thank you. Joan leaned back. "What worries me isn't the money alone. It's the entanglement. Financial and social obligations are reinforcing each other. That's how dependency works. It doesn't look like a chain, it looks like a braid." I wrote that down verbatim. It looks like a braid. Academic debate phrase, interlocking systems of influence. We spent the next hour mapping out a timeline of transactions and events since Sylvia came into the picture. The uptick was clear increased spending, new high society circles, and a slow pivot of Emma's attention towards Sylvia's sphere. I'd suggest she keeps her finances and social commitments completely separate from Sylvia's, Joan said. If she attends an event, she pays for it entirely herself or doesn't go. No shared accounts, no co-signed anything. That night, I called Emma and relayed Joan's advice in bite-sized, non-threatening pieces. "It's not about cutting ties," I said. "It's about making sure the ropes have quick-release knots." Emma chuckled at that. "I'll think about it. Daniel's on board with paying the necklace off early, so that's a start." Quirky fact. Progress is rarely dramatic. It's the slow accumulation of choices in the right direction. Joke 2, kind of like laundry. Ignore it too long and it gets expensive. I hung up feeling like we'd just put up the first section of a fence, not enough to keep trouble out forever, but enough to make anyone pause before stepping in uninvited. By early June, the first gala invitation arrived, a thick cream-colored envelope with gold edging, hand-delivered by a courier in a blazer far too warm for the season. Old age wisdom, important mail, doesn't need to look expensive to be important, but expensive-looking mail is always designed to feel urgent. Emma called me that evening. "It's for July," she said, her voice somewhere between flattered and hesitant. "Sylvia already RSVP'd for all of us." "All of us?" I asked. "Me, Daniel, and her. She says she'll cover my ticket since it's the first one. And Daniel's." There was a pause. "She assumed he'd pay for his own." We went over the numbers, again outfits, transportation, plus that subtle pressure to be seen at the right tables. "If you go," I suggested, set a spending cap and stick to it. And no agreeing to anything on the spot, committees, donations, follow-ups, tell them you'll check your calendar first. Quirky fact, "I'll check my calendar" is the social equivalent of a safety pin, small, simple, and capable of holding a lot together. Joke 1, unless your calendar is a napkin, in which case, good luck. 2 days later, I ran into Sylvia at the local florist. She was ordering a centerpiece worthy of the occasion for the gala, which she made sure to tell me she was thrilled Emma would finally experience. "It's such a wonderful opportunity," she said, her tone carrying the weight of an unspoken, "Don't you agree?" "I'm sure it will be memorable," I replied, keeping my expression as neutral as milk. That weekend, I met with Joan again, bringing the invitation for her to inspect. She pointed out a small notation at the bottom. "Proceeds benefit the Foundation's annual pledge drive and raised an eyebrow. That's the kind of line that comes with pledge cards at every place setting. Academic debate phrase for the occasion, implied philanthropic consent. When I shared that with Emma, she sighed. I'll go this time, but I'm bringing my own pen and a budget. And I'll tell Daniel ahead of time that no is a complete sentence. Quirky fact. Deciding your boundaries before you're tested is like setting the GPS before you drive. You're less likely to end up somewhere you didn't plan. Joke 2, unless you hand the GPS to someone else, then wonder why you're at a gala. For the first time since Mother's Day, I felt like Emma was starting to see the full shape of the picture and that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to start drawing her own lines in ink. The July gala unfolded exactly as Joan had predicted. The venue was dripping in white orchids and crystal chandeliers, and the air had that faintly perfumed chill you get when money rents a ballroom. Old age wisdom. When the lights are too soft to read the fine print, it's usually because someone doesn't want you reading it. I didn't attend. I told Emma I wanted her to navigate it on her own, but she called me the next morning, still half laughing, half exhausted. You were right. Pledge cards at every place setting. Sylvia made sure mine was front and center. Did you sign it? No, she said proudly. I told the volunteer I'd take it home to review with my accountant. Daniel nearly choked on his champagne, trying not to laugh. Quirky fact, invoking my accountant works as a polite force field in certain circles. Joke 1, Joan is now my honorary accountant purely for defense purposes. Emma described how the evening played out, introductions to the right people, multiple hints about joining the gala committee next year, and Sylvia's quiet but constant steering of conversations. She'd jump in and answer questions for me, even when I could have handled it, Emma said. It was like she wanted to make sure they saw me through her filter. Academic debate phrase for my mental notes, narrative. Control in social positioning. Later that week, Daniel stopped by alone. I think Emma's starting to see it, he said, settling into the porch chair. It's not that Sylvia's a villain, it's that she's used to being the central character in every scene. That's a generous way to put it, I said. She loves Emma, he went on, but she also collects people. Like they're proof she's important. We talked about practical steps. Emma paying off the necklace early, declining more invitations than she accepted, and keeping finances completely separate. Daniel promised to support those boundaries, even if it meant the occasional awkward conversation with his mother. Quirky fact. Awkward conversations are like rain. You can avoid them for a while, but eventually you get wet. Joke 2. Bring an umbrella and a change of topic. By the end of our talk, I felt something shift, not just in Emma and Daniel's awareness, but in my own. I was no longer just reacting to Sylvia's moves. I was helping my daughter build her own playbook. August brought a different kind of test. Sylvia invited Emma and Daniel on a weekend trip to the coast, my treat, she said, which we'd all learned could mean my itinerary, my rules. Old age wisdom free trips have the most expensive receipts, and they're rarely printed on paper. Emma called me the day before they left. She's got everything planned down to what time we'll have brunch each morning, she said. Part of me wants to bail, but Daniel says we should go and just manage it. Then set some trip boundaries now, I told her. One activity you choose each day. No money talk, no committee talk, and if either of you feels cornered, agree on a signal. Quirky fact, having a prearranged escape signal works just as well for family politics as it does for bad dates. Joke 1, sometimes the signal is just a very loud, "Wow, would you look at the time?" They went, and when they came back Sunday night, Emma's face told the whole story. It wasn't terrible, she admitted, but she did try to bring up the necklace again, said it was an investment in my image. Did you use the signal? Daniel grinned. Twice. Worked like a charm. Emma went on to describe how Sylvia had introduced her at a seaside lunch to a couple from the gala, making sure to mention the generous gift exchange on Mother's Day. It felt like she was telling my story for me, Emma said, and I didn't like how it sounded. Academic debate phrase, third-party narrative, ownership. That night, Daniel and Emma agreed to skip the next gala entirely. "We'll send a polite decline," Daniel said. "No excuses, just a thank you, but we can't make it." Quirky fact, the word can't is harder to argue with than won't. It leaves less room for negotiation. Joke 2 also works on pushy salespeople and anyone with a clipboard. Hearing them make that choice without my prompting felt like progress. The braid Joan had described was starting to loosen one strand at a time. By September, Emma's voice had a different cadence when she called lighter, less rehearsed. Old age wisdom, you can hear freedom in the pauses. It's the absence of measuring every word. She told me she'd met with her bank to close a for convenience joint savings account Sylvia had set up months ago. It only had a small balance, but I didn't like that it existed at all, Emma said. The banker asked if there had been any unusual activity, and I just said, "Not yet, and I'd like to keep it that way." Quirky fact, shutting down a potential problem feels as satisfying as fixing an actual one. Joke 1, it's like catching a leak before it floods your laundry room. Meanwhile, Daniel had quietly moved their household budget into a shared spreadsheet, something Sylvia didn't have access to. "We can both see every dollar now," he told me. "No more surprises and no more, 'Oh, I'll cover it and you can pay me back.'" Academic debate phrase, restoring financial sovereignty. The real turning point came when Emma hosted a small dinner at her own home and invited only friends who weren't connected to Sylvia's network. No committee members, no gala regulars, just the people she and Daniel genuinely enjoyed. I watched her that night, relaxed and laughing, telling stories that belonged solely to her. When dessert came, she leaned over and whispered, "This feels better. No velvet boxes, no speeches, just us." A week later, she forwarded me an email from Sylvia about an upcoming charity auction. Emma's reply was short and polite. "Thank you for thinking of me. I won't be able to participate this year, but I wish you great success with the event." Quirky fact, declining without apology is a learned skill, and once you have it, you start using it everywhere. Joke 2. It's the verbal equivalent of a comfortable pair of shoes, supportive and blister-free. I saved that email in my own progress folder. It was proof that Emma was now steering her own ship and Sylvia was no longer holding the compass. October rolled in with crisp mornings and that soft gold light that makes even ordinary porches look like postcards. Emma called one Saturday to ask if she could drop by with something to show me. Old age wisdom surprises in autumn are usually pumpkins or paperwork. Both can be heavy, but only one requires a pen. She arrived with Daniel and a manila folder. Inside were the final payment receipts for the necklace. "We paid it off early," she said, smiling in a way that reached her shoulders this time. "No interest. And it's insured, so it's not just sitting in the jewelry box, tempting fate." Quirky fact. Crossing a debt off the list feels like you've just vacuumed your whole life. Joke 1, it's loud for a bit, but then you can hear yourself think. Daniel added, "We've also got 3 months' worth of expenses saved now. First time since we got married." They told me they'd decided to set a Sylvia budget for the year, not a cent more than they were willing to lose to her world, whether in events, gifts, or opportunities. If we want to go over, Emma said, it has to be a joint decision, not an impulse. Academic debate phrase, preemptive fiscal boundaries. Then Emma pulled out another page, a guest list for Thanksgiving dinner at their house. "And before you ask, yes, Sylvia is invited," she said. "But so are a dozen other people. We're keeping it balanced." I could see the strategy. Sylvia wouldn't have the stage to herself, and Emma could control the flow of the evening. Quirky fact, good hosts are also good directors. They decide where the spotlight falls. Joke 2, and the encore is always pie. As they left, I realized the braid Joan had warned me about wasn't just loosening, it was nearly undone. And my daughter was the one untying it. Thanksgiving arrived with the kind of chill that makes coffee taste better and voices carry farther. Old age wisdom holidays Our pressure cookers add too much heat and something's bound to boil over. Emma's dining room glowed with soft amber light, the table set in warm earth tones, not a single ostentatious centerpiece in sight. Daniel was carving the turkey, guests were chatting in overlapping currents, and Sylvia sat midway down the table, flanked by people she didn't know well enough to control. A strategic seating plan very much on purpose. I watched Emma circulate like a conductor, checking on the kitchen, laughing with friends, introducing acquaintances. When Sylvia tried to steer the conversation toward the exclusive circle she'd brought Emma into, my daughter smiled, thanked her graciously, and then shifted the topic to Daniel's latest project. It was seamless, no tension, no visible effort. Quirky fact: redirecting a conversation without making it awkward is the social equivalent of changing lanes without signaling, but still getting a thank you wave. Joke 1 takes skill timing and just enough charm to get away with it. After dessert, as guests drifted into the living room, Emma slipped into the kitchen where I was rinsing plates. "Well," she asked. "You ran that table like you were born doing it," I said. Balanced, generous, in control. She exhaled. It felt good. Not about proving anything, just being myself without worrying what she'd say later. Academic debate phrase, autonomous identity, reinforcement. When Sylvia left, she hugged Emma, complimented the meal, and didn't linger. No grand declarations, no subtle hooks, just a goodbye. Later that night, after the last dish was stacked and the lights were dimmed, Emma handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thanks for being my anchor when the current got tricky. I'm steering now." Quirky fact: anchors aren't meant to hold you forever. They're there so you can choose when and where to sail. Joke 2, and occasionally to remind you not to drift into expensive jewelry stores. Marian Ellis attends a Mother's Day brunch where her daughter Emma gives a $20,000 necklace to her mother-in-law Sylvia along with a public toast. Marian senses deeper strings attached to Sylvia's guidance. Conversations with neighbors and observations at the brunch reveal that Sylvia's generosity often comes with unspoken debts. As Marian investigates, she discovers Emma's increasing involvement in expensive social circles. Sylvia controls gala committees, high-cost events, and joint financial accounts. With help from her friend Joan, a retired accountant, Marian maps out the financial and social entanglements, framing them as a braid of influence. She chooses a careful approach, keeping conversations with Emma focused on numbers and choices, not personalities. Over months, Emma and Daniel begin making changes, paying off the necklace early, declining most gala invitations, and separating their finances from Sylvia's. They set clear limits, what Marian calls a Sylvia budget, and practice polite but firm refusals to avoid being drawn into further obligations. Sylvia's attempts to steer Emma's public image continue, but Emma learns to redirect conversations, manage appearances without surrendering control, and maintain her autonomy. Marian witnesses her daughter host events on her own terms, ensuring Sylvia isn't the sole influencer in the room. By Thanksgiving, Emma has mastered balancing graciousness with boundaries. She hosts a warm, inclusive dinner where Sylvia has no opportunity to dominate the evening. Emma's private thanks to Marian, acknowledging her as the anchor in turbulent waters, marks the full shift. Emma is steering her own course. Marian's quiet satisfaction comes not from winning against Sylvia, but from seeing her daughter navigate social and financial currents with confidence, independence, and grace.